With AJ playing his last home game tomorrow, just kind of want to talk about him for a second. How different do you think these past 2 years would have looked, had he decided a different decision when he was a sophomore and left?
I thought you were going to say how different it would have looked if the first 2 years I was here. So we could go the other way on that question.
If you had been here all 4 of his years,
Exactly.
Well, how would that have been? Okay, either way, you choose your adventure.
That one's exactly. Well, to be honest, the whole time frame when I got hired, and then whatever was going on with him, it was all out of whack and all weird with COVID. I mean, that continued on. So, in some respects, the whole thing, went the way it went. And I think COVID played a major role in a lot of it, and then COVID played a major role in whatever we did in that first year. The way I think about it is, I really think AJ, I'd really like for him to play well tomorrow, and the game after that, because I really think he's improved a lot. I mean, when you saw him play earlier this season, and as we were doing what we were doing, he was playing really, really well. I mean, he was shooting the ball at a high clip, being extremely efficient. I saw that improvement coming that way. I think what happened a little bit was with the young team, different guys within that rotation at different times. Each one of them has hit a little bit of the wall, you know what I mean? And then that chemistry sort of goes awry a little bit. And now I think a little bit of that is now hit AJ a little bit late in the year. But again, I think, like I said, I'd like for him to just play really well because I know he's improved. His numbers were showing that, and now it'd be great for him in his last, home game. And then conference tournament for him to play as well as he can and to the level that we were seeing, I think earlier in this season, and it'd be great for him to finish that way.
And it looks like he's playing in the post a lot, or at least, taking a mismatch into the post. Is that something that, why is that?
Well, that's something we work on, I mean? That's got to be something as we keep going through this, I don't know if our inside game is ever going to come from, I mean, historically, our inside game is not going to come from our inside guys. That's not where the advantage lies. They got 6'10" and 7-foot guys, you know what I mean? We don't. But if we can play with 6'4" and 6'5" guards, and they're playing with 6-foot guards, which they do in this league, you got to find your advantage. And AJ is strong, stocky. He's got really good legs. And I've always been a big believer about the best post guys are guys who can dribble and guys who can make moves because that makes the defense try to come down and help, and then they're good passers out of there. So, one area where I know he's really improved and has gotten really comfortable is down in there, and if you're a guy, again, like AJ, who, okay, you got to guard him out on the perimeter. You got to maybe go face guard him like some teams have done, and we can't let him get the ball and this and that, and he's going to shoot threes and do this, and then all of a sudden you're that guy and you got to go guard him in the post too. I mean, that's hard, so that's called, to me, just being a complete player, and he's sort of developed that way. And, to his credit, sort of embraced it and, like you said, knows I got an advantage here. So I'm going to go take advantage of it and know where I have those opportunities. And it's been a big, obviously been a big help. And I'm hopeful, and I know that, Jake Heidebreder and Ethan with their size and, that's got to become an advantage. And they've been able to watch this year as AJ's, as a guard, is taking guys in there and been extremely productive in the post.
And then away from the court, where do you think his biggest contribution has come? What kind of a leader is he? What have you observed?
I mean, he is a very, he's quiet, you know what I mean? So oftentimes that kind of leadership then is just sort of done in a steadiness way. He's very steady. He's pretty much the same guy every day, which is important. As you go through this, you got to be the same person all the time. You got to be the same person when things are going great. You got to be the same person when, I'm not doing so hot, and you got to show up that way and be that way so your teammates can see that. And I think he's done a really good job with that. And he's done a really good job just in terms of what we started with, having a change, within your career and being able to sort of grow through that change. Like I said, I think he's improved. His game is, developed. So that's a form of leadership in and of itself, facing change, that, maybe you didn't ask for, and you got to be able to deal with it. And through that process, you got to grow and develop. And, that's something everybody can look at, and especially as you look at this year when he then had to play with these freshmen and say, okay, how am I going to play and be a leader to help these freshmen? And like we said all year, if he can do that well, then there's going to come a time where these freshmen are going to help him. And, that's what I really like to see, in these last couple games, especially tomorrow. Like I said, because he's done a really good job in all these areas. So you do that so that when you get to this time of the year, you play well. And that'd be great to see from him tomorrow.
And then we talked about guys hitting a wall. How important do you think it would be for someone like Ethan to have big games, tomorrow, next week, just to spring them forward?
Yeah, well, it's like I said after the game, and I told our guys before the game, there's an end game in college basketball, and it's called the season. And season means some guys hit walls. Like I said, sometimes you're hot, sometimes you're cold. But there's a season, and by and large, if there's 355 Division I teams, by and large, everybody's playing that game of how do I handle the season? How do we minimize the downs? How do we maximize the ups? How do we stay even-keeled? Because there's an end game, and when you get to late February, you got to be playing well. And it doesn't really matter what happened prior. The only thing that matters is how well are you playing in late February and in early March, because the end game starts, right, in March, and that's what we're doing here. And there's, I'd probably say, 250 teams that's what college basketball season is for them. How do you handle the season so that when late February and March comes, you're ready to play your best basketball? That's what I said to our guys before the game Saturday. And it's because, that's the end game we're playing, and we got to play well. And there's no question, if you look at our last whatever games at AJ and Ethan in terms of scoring, right? Boy, oh boy, it would be great to have those two guys, come out here in the last tomorrow, and then the game after that, and play the way we've seen them play, earlier in the year. And that's why I said it's like, okay, it doesn't really matter if the last 4 games have been this or that. It's about playing well right now, because we got a conference tournament, just like everybody in basketball has a conference tournament, and you got to be ready to play well and be looking forward to that so that you play well then, and then you go game to game after that. And like I said, there's 250 teams doing that. If there are teams that are fighting for at-larges and all that, great. But by and large, that's what it is, and that's what we got to be able to do here. I thought we did a good job Saturday. We didn't get the result we want, but we went down there and had a chance to win that game. That's what we got to do, and if we do that, then that means we played better. We got to do it again tomorrow. That'll put us in the best position we can be to then go ahead and do it the following Wednesday.
Coach, you talk about highs and lows. How far off does that 7-game win streak feel like at the beginning of the season? And what's the difference that you're seeing with that 7 games there to the 9 games that you're on right now?
I just think, again, that's a great question, because I was thinking that this morning. It's just, okay, that's called a season, especially when, if you'd asked me at the beginning of the year, were we going to have a 7-game winning streak with what we're doing, I would have said, man, I don't know what, I can't even think that way. So I just think our guys have gone through that. What it is and says is, like I've told them, we're capable of something like that. Obviously, I think what has been extremely positive this year is, as we went through the non-conference schedule and we showed, that we can be a kind of team that wins 7 in a row non-conference. I think we showed we can be a kind of team who, I think we were undefeated at home in non-conference. Well, those are first steps. You got to be good non-conference before you think you're going to be good in the Mountain West Conference. You got to be good non-conference at home before you think you're actually going to win home games in the Mountain West Conference at a consistent time. So we did that this year. I think we accomplished that, and I think there's more room for growth there as well. But then you hit the league, and you know what? The league's a different animal. Like I said, I brought up last time, the first time I was here, we were 3-11 3 straight years. We didn't win a road game for 3 straight years. So that's called being in this league, and our guys had a non-conference season this year that actually was like year 3 the first time I was here, undefeated, a good one. And now you got to learn, how do you take a 22-point halftime lead against Denver, a young team being able to do that. A 33-point halftime lead against Army, being able to have a team like that. And then how do you transfer that to Mountain West Conference play? And that's really what it comes down to. And you're not going to accomplish all that in 1 year, you know what I mean? That's where these guys got to grow up. They got to get older. They got to get physically stronger. But what they have to know is we're capable of that. We did that. And now the next step is we got to start to apply that to the league. And then go through this experience and apply it through a league where the league season's a 9-week season. And it's 2 months at the end of the season, not the beginning of the season. And having the wherewithal to handle that and be able to transfer sort of that same mentality, that same sort of, belief and knowing this is who we are and we can win 7 games in a row and play that way. And, yeah, I know you got to transfer that to the league. And that's, if we're saying next year that, well, we got to make sure we play non-conference that way, and we do, and then we're trying to transfer that, well, that's the step that you're trying, because then you'd be saying, okay, how much improvement are we going to make in that area? And that's, again, why even these last 2 weeks, they're important to know, here's the league season, there's an end game, and we're going to show we know there's an end game, and you're going to know it in how we play these last few games. I think we did a good job of that Saturday. We got to do it tomorrow. We got to be ready to go do it the following Wednesday.
It may seem counterintuitive in a way, but do you think it's important, especially for a young team, to not just know what it's like to win consecutive games in a row, but also know the feeling of losing consecutive games in a row?
Well, I mean, I think nobody likes to go through that, but, I don't know many things that just go like this, you know what I mean? And when you have to fight through struggles and battles and, this league's going to go through their own, is the league going to be as good next year? I have no idea, But I think a bunch of 23-year-olds are not going to be getting a 6th-year of college basketball, you know what I mean? But it might be true, though. We never know in this day and age. But there'll be those kinds of cycles, you know what I mean? We'll have our own cycles. And really what it comes down to is just sort of knowing and having had the experience of knowing what a season is and knowing that there's a non-conference part to it, there's a conference part to it. Are you going to win 7 games in a row in the beginning of the year and think that you're really good? Well, you're just going to find out, probably as you go through, you're not as good as that. And the more you're able to have that approach, that consistency, that way to show up every day and be the same person, then I think that's when you get to where you do see that transference, to where, okay, we know who we are and we're going to transfer that into league. I think you've seen individually some guys do that this year. You've seen Lucas sort of hit a wall, not really do well, actually be looking at him and going, geez, it doesn't look like the same guy. But then through the right behavior and the right approach, sort of come back, and now you're watching him. I'm actually looking at a guy who I think as a freshman finishing his freshman year is starting to go, hey, I'm pretty good. And now it's, where does he take that? And what you got to do is just, to your question, you just got to keep working. You got to keep working. You got to keep climbing the mountain. You got to get up. You got to keep taking the punches. Like I said after the game, I'm never backing down. I'm not wavering. You can't get me to back down. I don't care. I don't care what happens. And there's a reason for that, because that's the way our guys got to be. And if you are, we've all seen that there are some good pieces here and there's some good chemistry here, and we've seen it at different times. And now what we all want, is to see it in league play. And what I really want to see is just see it here, like, again, in these last couple of games, because then those are all the signs that you look for as a coach. And those are all the things that they can then take into the postseason and April to October. And that's where a lot of growth comes.
Do you think the difference between non-conference and conference play was a little eye-opening for the team this year?
I do. I don't think it wasn't eye-opening, say, for A.J. Walker, you know what I mean, and guys that have been through it. But I think it's eye-opening, especially when, like you're saying, you win 7 games and, okay, and who knows, you don't even know at that juncture when you're 7-1 or whatever, they don't even know what the Mountain West is, these guys, to then go to the pit, to then play, a really good Boise State team, and go to San Diego State. So I think it has been eye-opening. I think, like I said after the game the other day, the first step is just being in every game. Like I said, we didn't win on Saturday, and that was Fresno stayed here. 5 of our last 9 games where we weren't in them. That's got to get to where that doesn't happen, because then all you're doing is practicing what you have to do to win those games all the time. And then as you go from year to year, right, you one day learn, yep, I'm winning these games. And so again, non-conference, conference, and really I think what it comes down to is just teaching yourself being good's really hard, winning's really hard. You got to be the same guy every day. The whole team's got to be that way every day. And once you've had that experience together, then I think you can build that way together and really know when the coach is talking to you. Now you really know what the coach is saying, and it's not just something that you're having to imagine because you've never been through it. These guys are going to know now, and where are they and us going to go with that from there?
You mentioned not backing down. It seems like Joe Octave has kind of taken that on. Is that something you've talked to him about, or is that just part of his maturation process?
I think it's the same thing what I said with Lucas. Joe's had a season where starts out well, you know what I mean, and great. And then you get to a point where maybe there's a little bit of a dip. Yeah, I know that happens. I said it happens to sophomores, you know what I mean? And as that's occurred, he hurt his, his finger. And during that time when he came back, I watched him practice, and I saw sort of like, okay, I'm seeing like a little bit different sort of attitude. And does that come from him having played 20 games and knowing I played pretty good in some, and then I didn't in others, and taking that and saying, well, this is what I'm going to do with that now. And that's sort of what I've seen from him, over the last 2.5 to 3 weeks. Because of that, his minutes are going up, and that's what happens when you play that way. So I'd like to see it again, you know what I mean? Because all those things are just sort of, you get to the point when you play college basketball, and it's different for each guy, where you hit a certain point. I've played X amount of games, and you know what, from here on out, I play the same way every game. It's basically what it comes down to. I play the same way. I just might go, 4 for 8 this game, and the next game I went 2 for 7, you know what I mean? But I still played the same way. I play good defense. I compete. I know what I'm doing. I help my team when I'm out there, and that's what I'm starting to see from him. And that's, again, another good sign, because he's only a sophomore, you know what I mean? So the experience he's getting, and for him to start to see that in himself, and now I hope expect that from himself when he goes out on the court.
I'm curious do you think mental toughness is learned, or is it just, an innate thing with somebody?
I think it's a little bit of both. What do they call that? Nature and nurture. You got to have it in you a little bit. You got to have, if you got it in you a little bit, and you go through these things and you get taught certain things that's important to you, then it brings it out even more in you. You know what I mean? And like anything, everybody's on the continuum when it comes to that kind of toughness and that kind of grit. You know what I mean? Some people stop. Some people quit. Some people never stop. Some people never quit. And what you try to do, I think, in these situations is you always want to make it be about the team, because when it's about a team and when you're part of a group, and you look to your left and your right, and you got your teammates and they're counting on you, well, that's oftentimes the things that makes you never stop. If it was just you, I know what most people do. They'll just stop. And that's where I think, again, these guys going through this together, are we developing the question, that you asked, are we developing that mental toughness? And again, before the game on Saturday, that's what I stressed. I said 3 weeks ago, I said we got to get mentally tougher. And here we are on, February 26th, I'm saying it's about our mental toughness and our ability to know what this end game is, and our ability to get better in late February. And if you see that as a coach, then they see it, and they know they're getting it, and maybe it didn't happen the way they wanted it to, but you know what? That doesn't really matter. It matters that it's happening.
All right, we've talked a lot about doom and gloom and losing. Are you enjoying, not the results, but just the process?
Yeah, like I said, the only thing that I'm disappointed in is and I shouldn't be, but it's probably because of 7-game win streak and seeing the team play in certain manners and sort of developing that consistency. Just a little bit of those, like the 5 games I mentioned. That's the only thing as I look at this season. And I look at myself in that regard, you know, not the players, just as much me and my coaches, right? We had those 5 games, and okay, what could we have done better? What are we going to learn from those 5 games, and how are we going to get our team to know that? Because that's the first step here, you know what I mean, is you got to be able in this league to compete 18 straight nights with a chance to win. Now, is that saying a lot? Yeah, but that's the first step, and if you can do that, you know what, then you know you're doing it and going in the right direction, and then you know, okay, how are we going to take the next step? So, you know, like I said, I know it's way better than what it was last year in terms of our competitiveness and being in these games. I'm disappointed with those 5. We got minimum of 2 left. We went back on Saturday, and we're in the game with a chance to win it. I want us to finish that same exact way, because then it'll have been like a season. We had our good times. We went down a little bit, but then we came back, and then that's how you go take the next step from there.